The diplomatic station floated in the darkness of space like a massive wheel of light. Inside, hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds moved through the halls. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4. Some had skin, others had scales or fur. This was Axios Prime, where the galaxy came to talk instead of fight. Day 1 stood near the back wall of the grand reception hall. His black uniform marked him as security, though most aliens barely noticed him. Humans were still new here. They had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Most species saw them as soft and weak. Day 1 didn't care what they thought. He had a job to do. He scanned the crowd with trained eyes. Ambassadors and delegates filled the room, their voices a mixture of languages both spoken and telepathic. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow light across the polished floor. Everything looked peaceful. Everything looked safe. That's when Day 1 saw her. Queen Hei-In of the Velaran Empire stood near the center of the room. She was impossible to miss. Nearly 7 feet tall, her skin looked like living crystal, shifting between pale blue and silver as she moved. The Valorans were one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their empire stretched across 40 systems. Their warriors were legendary. Beside the queen stood a small figure in a flowing white dress. The child couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her crystalline skin sparkled with hints of pink and gold as she looked around the room with wide, curious eyes. Princess Jia, Day 1 remembered from the briefing. The queen's only daughter. The little princess tugged on her mother's hand, pointing at something across the room. Queen Hei-In smiled down at her child, her skin warming to a soft amber color. Even from 20 feet away, Day 1 could see the love in that gesture. He checked his watch. Another hour until the reception ended. Then the delegates would return to their ships and his shift would be over. Simple, routine. The explosion shattered that thought. Everything happened in fragments, too fast for normal thought. Day 1's combat training took over. His eyes found the source before his mind fully processed what he was seeing. A server droid near the refreshment table sparked and split open. Inside, something dark and deadly began to glow. An improvised bomb, big enough to kill everyone within 30 feet. Day 1's brain calculated angles and distances in a heartbeat. The queen was turning away, hadn't seen it yet. Her guards were too far. But Princess Jia had wandered a few steps closer to the table, reaching for a sweet treat on a lower shelf. She was right in the blast zone. Day 1 didn't think. Thinking took too long. His legs were already moving, carrying him forward in a sprint. People shouted around him. Someone screamed. The bomb's glow intensified, reaching critical mass. He had maybe 2 seconds. The princess looked up as his shadow fell over her. Her eyes went wide. Day 1 didn't slow down. He crashed into the small girl, wrapping his arms around her tiny body and twisting in midair. His back hit the floor first, the child cushioned against his chest. Then he curled himself completely around her, making his body a shield. The world exploded. Heat and force slammed into Day 1's back like a giant fist. He felt his bones crack. Something hot tore through his shoulder and leg. The air left his lungs. Pain screamed through every nerve. But he didn't let go. His arms stayed locked around the princess, keeping her covered, keeping her safe. More explosions followed. Smaller ones, secondary devices hidden around the room. Screams filled the air. The lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red. Day 1 couldn't move. His body wouldn't respond. Every breath felt like knives in his chest. But he could feel the small girl beneath him, trembling but breathing, still alive. That was all that mattered. Footsteps pounded toward them. Heavy, fast military. Someone grabbed Day 1's shoulder and he nearly screamed from the pain. A deep voice spoke in a language he didn't know. More hands, gentler this time, touched him. Don't move him. Another voice, this one speaking English. His spine might be broken. Get the princess first, Day 1 tried to say, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. Then she was there. Queen Hei-In dropped to her knees beside him. Her crystalline skin had gone completely white, the color of shock and fear. Her hands hovered over Day 1's broken body, trembling. Behind her, royal guards formed a protective circle, weapons drawn. Jia, the queen said, her voice shaking. Baby, are you hurt, Mama? The small voice came from beneath Day 1. Mama, I'm scared. The man is heavy. Relief washed over the queen's face. Her skin flickered with gold. Carefully, so carefully, she reached under Daewon and lifted her daughter out from his protective embrace. The little princess had a scratch on her cheek and dust in her hair. Nothing else. She was fine. Daewon felt his arms drop to the floor. His job was done. He could rest now. No, Queen Heian said sharply. She thrust her daughter into a guard's arms and turned back to Daewon. Her hands pressed against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. No, you don't leave. You stay. Do you hear me, human? You stay. Medical teams rushed in with equipment. Someone put a mask over Daewon's face. Oxygen flooded his lungs, clearing some of the fog from his mind. He looked up at the Queen. Her face filled his vision. Why? She asked, though he could barely hear her over the chaos. Why would you do this? She's not your kind. Not your people. You could have run. Daewon's lips moved. The words took all his remaining strength. She's a child. That's enough. Something changed in Queen Heian's eyes. Her skin shifted through colors he'd never seen before. Purple and gold and silver all at once. She placed her hand over his heart, pressing firmly. When she spoke, her voice carried through the entire room. Every Velaran present stopped and turned. Even through his pain, Daewon understood this was important. This meant something in their culture. Tal Shanar, the Queen declared. Lifekeeper, you are mine to protect as you protected mine. By the ancient law, by blood and crystal, I claim this debt. You are mine now. Do you understand? Mine to guard, mine to keep, mine to honor. This I swear before witnesses. The Velaran guards placed fists over their hearts in salute. The gesture rippled through every Valoran in the room. Daewon didn't understand. His vision was fading, going dark at the edges. But he saw Princess Jia peeking around her guard's shoulder, her small face worried. He managed a tiny smile for her. Then the darkness took him, and he knew nothing more. The medical team lifted his broken body onto a stretcher. Queen Heian walked beside it, her hand never leaving his. Behind them, investigators moved through the destroyed reception hall, counting bodies. 15 dead, 40 wounded, 1 human security guard in critical condition, 1 princess completely unharmed, and 1 queen who had just bound herself to a stranger by the oldest law of her people, a law that hadn't been invoked in 300 years. The other delegates whispered and stared. The human ambassador looked pale and confused, but Queen Heian didn't care. She watched the medical team work on Daewon, her crystalline skin glowing with determination. He had given everything to save her daughter. Now she would give everything to save him. This was only the beginning. Darkness was comfortable. Darkness didn't hurt. Daewon floated in it for what felt like forever, not really asleep but not awake either. Sometimes he heard voices. Sometimes he felt hands touching him, doing things to his body. But mostly there was just the dark and the quiet. Then the quiet started to fade. Voices became clearer. A steady beeping sound nearby. The whisper of air flowing through vents. The soft rustle of fabric. Slowly, like swimming up from deep water, Daewon fought his way back to consciousness. His eyes opened. The ceiling above him glowed with soft blue light, not the harsh white of a normal medical bay. This light was gentle, almost soothing. He tried to move his head and discovered he could. The pain he expected didn't come. He felt sore, yes, but not broken, not dying. Finally awake. Good. You've been sleeping for 10 days. Daewon turned toward the voice. A woman sat in a chair beside his bed. Not human. Her skin had the same crystalline quality as the Queen, but hers was a deeper blue with silver highlights. She wore white robes marked with medical symbols. Where am I? Daewon's voice came out rough and dry. Station Medical Facility. Royal Wing. The doctor stood and ran a scanner over him. You were very broken, human. Shattered vertebrae, collapsed lungs, severe burns, multiple fractures. Your species is remarkably fragile. The princess, Daewon said immediately. Is she? Princess Jia is perfectly well. Not a serious injury on her thanks to you. The doctor's skin flickered with a warm color. Approval, maybe. She asks about you every day. The Queen had to forbid her from visiting until you were stable. The Queen. Daewon remembered crystal skin and a declaration he didn't fully understand. What did she say? At the end, before I passed out? The doctor's expression turned serious. You truly don't know? The Queen invoked Tal Shanar. The life debt. It is our most sacred law. Before Daewon could ask more, the door opened. Ambassador Tae Yang walked in, followed by 2 other humans from the diplomatic corps. The ambassador looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. Day 1. Tae-yang pulled up a chair. How are you feeling? Confused, sir. What's going on? The ambassador sighed. That's what I'm here to explain, and you're not going to like it. Over the next 20 minutes, Tae-yang laid out the situation. The bombing had been carried out by a radical group that opposed human integration into galactic society. 15 dead, including 2 ambassadors from minor worlds. The investigation was ongoing, but that wasn't the problem. When Queen Heian declared Tal Shinar over you, Tae-yang explained, she bound you to her household by ancient Velaran law. It's not something that can be easily undone. According to their customs, you now belong to the royal family. Belong? Day-one's stomach dropped. Like a servant? No, more like adopted family. You're under her protection and authority, but you also have rights and status equivalent to a blood relative. Tae-yang rubbed his face. It's complicated, and it's causing political issues. Some people think the queen overstepped. Others worry about the precedent. Can I refuse it? Technically, yes, but it would be considered a grave insult. To refuse Tal Shinar is to reject the value of the life you saved. It's like saying the princess wasn't worth your sacrifice. That's not what it would mean. Doesn't matter what we think it means, Tae-yang interrupted. Matters what the Valorans think it means. And to them, refusing would be unforgivable. The door opened again. This time, a tall Velaran male entered, wearing the dark armor of a royal guard. His crystalline skin was a steely gray, and his expression could have been carved from stone. The queen requests the human's presence, the guard said in heavily accented English. If he is well enough. The doctor checked her scanner again. He can walk with assistance. No strenuous activity. 10 minutes later, Day-one found himself being helped down a corridor by 2 guards. His legs felt weak, like they might give out at any moment. But he could move, which was more than he'd expected. They entered a large room with windows overlooking the station. Inside, 2 groups of people waited. On one side stood the human delegation, a dozen diplomats and officials. On the other side stood the Valorans, just as many, all in formal dress, and in the center Queen Heian. She wore robes of deep purple, and her crystalline skin seemed to glow from within. When she saw Day-one, relief flickered across her features. Beside her stood Princess Jia, practically bouncing with excitement. Day-one, the little girl shouted, then looked embarrassed. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Princess Jia wished to see that you were well, the queen said. Her voice was formal, but her eyes were kind. As did I. Day-one didn't know if he should bow or salute or what. He settled for a respectful nod. Your Majesty, Princess, I'm glad you're both safe. Ambassador Tae-yang stepped forward. Your Majesty, we appreciate your concern for our citizen. However, we must discuss the matter of the Tal Shinar declaration. Perhaps there's a way to honor your customs while also respecting Day-one's autonomy. There is no discussion. Queen Heian's voice could have cut steel. Tal Shinar is law. This human gave his fragile body to save my daughter. He asked for nothing, expected nothing. He simply acted knowing he would likely die. Such sacrifice demands acknowledgement. No one questions the bravery of the act, Tae-yang said carefully. But forcing him into service, I force nothing. The queen turned to Day-one. You may refuse if you wish, but understand what that refusal means. Among my people, to reject Tal Shinar is to say the life saved held no value. It is to dishonor both the saved and the savior. My daughter would grow up knowing that the man who died to protect her considered her unworthy of even simple acknowledgement. Princess Jia looked up at Day-one with huge eyes. Don't you want to be my starkeeper? Her voice was small and worried. Something in Day-one's chest twisted. He looked at this little girl who had almost died. He thought about the moment he'd covered her with his body, felt the explosions tear into his back. He'd do it again in a heartbeat. He'd do it 1,000 times. What exactly does Tal Shinar mean? Day-one asked. What would it require of me? A Velaran male with commander's marks on his armor stepped forward. You would become part of the royal household. You would have quarters in the palace, status as family, and protection under royal law. In exchange, you would be expected to serve the family's interests and uphold our honor. Like a guard, if you wished, or advisor or teacher or simply companion. The role is yours to define within reason. The commander's expression softened slightly. Tal Shinar is not slavery, human. It is kinship earned through sacrifice. Day-one looked at the faces around him. The human delegation looked worried and uncertain. The Valorans looked solemn and respectful. Princess Gia looked hopeful. And Queen Heian looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I don't have family," Daewon heard himself say. "Back on Earth, I mean. No parents, no siblings. The military was my family, then this job." He paused. "If I accept, where would I live?" "Valora Prime," the Queen answered. "Our homeworld. You would travel with us when we leave this station. I've never been to an alien world before. Then it will be an adventure." A small smile touched the Queen's lips. "My daughter likes adventures." Daewon looked at Princess Gia again. The little girl gave him a shy smile. Something in his heart, something he'd thought was long dead, stirred to life. Maybe this was crazy. Maybe he'd regret it. But when he'd thrown himself over that child, he'd been prepared to die. Compared to that, living somewhere strange didn't seem so bad. "I accept," Daewon said. "The Tal Shinar." "I accept." The tension in the room broke like a wave. The Veloran guards placed fists over their hearts in that salute he'd seen before. Princess Gia squealed with delight and would have run to him if her mother hadn't caught her. "Gently, my star," Queen Heian said. "He's still healing," but she allowed the princess to approach. Gia took Daewon's hand carefully, like he was made of glass. "Thank you for staying," she whispered. "I was scared you'd say no." "Couldn't say no to you, princess," Daewon said softly. Queen Heian watched this exchange, and her skin shifted to that warm amber color again. "Then it is done. Daewon of Earth, you are Tal Shinar to House Heian. Welcome to our family." Ambassador Taeyang looked like he wanted to object further but knew he couldn't. Instead, he just sighed. "When do you leave for Valora Prime?" 3 days, the Queen answered. "Enough time for our new family member to recover strength for the journey. 3 days." Daewon had 3 days before his entire life changed forever. He should have been terrified. Instead, with Princess Gia holding his hand and looking up at him with complete trust, he felt something else entirely. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd found where he was supposed to be. The Crystal Palace rose from the mountains like something out of a dream. Towers of living stone and light stretched toward the purple sky of Valora Prime. Daewon stood at the window of the royal transport, watching as they descended toward the landing platforms. Everything here looked impossible, beautiful, and completely alien. "First time seeing it never disappoints," said a voice beside him. Daewon turned to see Lady Sora, the Queen's sister. She'd been polite but distant during the journey from Axios Prime. Her crystalline skin was a darker blue than her sister's, with hints of green that flickered when she was thinking. "It's incredible," Daewon said honestly. "Wait until you see the inside." Sora studied him with sharp eyes. "My sister has given you quarters in the family wing. That alone has caused quite a stir among the court. I don't want to cause problems. Too late for that, human. Your very existence here is a problem." But Sora's tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. "The question is whether you'll be a problem worth having." The transport landed with barely a bump. As they disembarked, Daewon got his first real look at Valorans in their natural environment. The landing platform bustled with activity. Guards in gleaming armor stood at attention. Servants moved with quiet efficiency, and everywhere that crystalline skin caught the light and threw it back in colors that seemed to shift with emotion. Princess Gia grabbed Daewon's hand immediately. "Come on, I want to show you everything." "Gia, let him settle in first," Queen Heian said, though she smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. She looked at Daewon. "Commander Yejun will show you to your quarters. Rest today. Tomorrow we begin your orientation." Commander Yejun stepped forward. He was the same guard who'd explained Tal Shinar back on the station. His expression was neutral, but Daewon could sense the man was evaluating him with every glance. The walk through the palace left Daewon speechless. Halls that seemed carved from single pieces of crystal, gardens that grew inside the building itself, lit by light that came from the walls, water that flowed upward in defiance of gravity. Every turn revealed something new and impossible. His quarters, when they finally reached them, were larger than any apartment he'd ever lived in on Earth. A bedroom, a sitting room, a bathroom with a pool-sized tub, and a balcony overlooking the mountains. "This is too much," Daewon said. "This is appropriate for your status," Yejun replied. "You are Tal Shinar to the royal family. You will be treated as such." He paused at the door. "Tomorrow morning early. I will come for you. We begin training. Training for what?" For survival. You are weak human, slower than us, more fragile, with none of our natural advantages. If you are to live among us, you must learn to defend yourself and those you've sworn to protect. The door closed before Day One could respond. That first night he barely slept. The bed was comfortable, but everything felt wrong. The sounds were wrong. The smells were wrong. Even gravity felt slightly different. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. Morning came too early. Yejun arrived exactly when promised, leading Day One to a training facility deep in the palace. The room was huge, with floors designed to absorb impacts and walls lined with weapons Day One didn't recognize. "Show me what you know," Yejun said simply. They sparred. It didn't go well. Yejun moved like water and struck like thunder. He was faster than Day One, stronger, and his crystalline skin absorbed impacts that would have broken human bones. Within minutes, Day One was on his back, breathing hard, aching everywhere. "Pathetic," Yejun said, though not unkindly. "You have courage, but no ability to back it up." Again. They went again, and again, and again. By the end of the session, Day One could barely stand. But he noticed something. Yejun was teaching, not just defeating him, showing him how to use leverage instead of strength, how to predict movement instead of reacting to it, how to survive when you were outmatched. This became the routine. Every morning, training with Yejun. Every afternoon, language and culture lessons with various tutors. Every evening, dinner with the royal family, where Princess Jia would chatter about her day and ask him 1,000 questions about Earth. Word spread through the palace about the human training with the commander. Velorans began showing up to watch. At first, Day One hated it. He was constantly losing, constantly being thrown around like a toy. But he kept getting back up. "Why do you keep coming back?" Yejun asked after a particularly brutal session 2 weeks in. "You gain almost nothing. Your body cannot match ours." Day One wiped blood from his split lip. "Because giving up isn't an option. The queen brought me here to protect her family. I can't do that if I'm useless." Something changed in Yejun's expression. "Respect, maybe. Then we train harder." After a month, Day One started winning occasionally. Not through strength, but through strategy. He introduced concepts from human martial arts, using an opponent's momentum against them, targeting weak points instead of trying to overpower, fighting smart instead of fighting hard. The watching Valorans took notice. One afternoon, a young Valoran approached him after training. The boy was maybe 16, with skin that shifted between blue and green. "I'm Kiwan, the queen's nephew. That move you did, the one where you redirected Commander Yejun's strike. Can you teach me that?" "I'm not really a teacher. Please. My tutors only show me traditional forms. They're beautiful, but not practical. What you do is practical." Day One glanced at Yejun, who gave a small nod. That's how it started. Teaching Kiwan in the evenings. Then Kiwan brought friends. Soon, Day One found himself instructing a small group of young Velorans in human combat techniques. They were fascinated by the concept of using weakness as strength, of turning disadvantages into advantages. Princess Jia became his constant companion outside training. She'd appear in the library where he studied, in the gardens where he walked, always ready with more questions. Why was Earth's sky blue instead of purple? Did humans really eat dead animals? Could he tell her a story from his homeworld? Day One found he didn't mind. The little princess reminded him why he'd accepted this life. And slowly, teaching her about humanity taught him more about Valorans in return. But not everything was peaceful. One evening, as Day One walked through the palace gardens, 3 Valoran nobles blocked his path. Their skin colors marked them as high-ranking members of the court. "Human," the lead noble said, his voice cold. "You do not belong here. This is the royal family's private space." "The queen gave me access to these gardens," Day One replied carefully. "The queen makes mistakes." The noble stepped closer. He was easily 8 inches taller than Day One and twice as broad. "Tal-Shinar is an ancient law, meant for our people, not for weak aliens who stumble into heroism by accident." "I didn't stumble into anything." "No? You simply saw an opportunity to worm your way into the royal household." "How clever. Save the princess, earn the mother's favor." The noble's skin flashed red, anger. "We see through you, human. You are not family. You are a pet." Day One's hands clenched at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to fight back. But starting a brawl with nobles wouldn't help anyone. He forced himself to stay calm. Think what you want. I know why I'm here. Do you? The noble leaned down, his face inches from Daewon's. You are here because our queen is too soft-hearted. But hearts change. When she tires of you, where will you be then? Stranded on an alien world with no purpose and no home. That's enough. Queen Heian's voice cut through the garden like a blade. She stepped out of the shadows, and Daewon realized she'd been there the whole time. Her skin blazed with colors he'd never seen before, furious reds and golds. The nobles immediately bowed. Your Majesty, we were simply insulting a member of my household. The queen's voice was ice. Daewon is Tal Shinar. He is mine. Do you challenge this? The lead noble hesitated, then shook his head. No, Your Majesty. Then you will show him the respect his sacrifice earned. Queen Heian placed her hand over her heart, the formal gesture of absolute declaration. He gave his body to save my daughter. He gave up his world to honor our laws. He trains every day to be worthy of the trust I placed in him. What have you done that compares? Silence, I thought so. Leave. Now. The nobles fled. Daewon and the queen stood alone in the garden as the light faded. Thank you, Daewon said quietly. But you didn't have to. Yes, I did. Queen Heian turned to him, and her skin had settled into that warm amber he'd learned meant affection. You are not a pet. You are not a mistake. You are exactly where you should be. How can you be so sure? She smiled. Because my daughter laughs more than she ever has. Because my nephew has learned more about real combat in a month than in years of traditional training. Because Commander Yejun told me yesterday that you might actually survive a real fight now. She paused. And because when I watch you with my family, I see someone who has found his place. Daewon looked out at the alien landscape, the purple sky and crystal mountains. 3 months ago, he would have called this view impossible. Now it was just home. I'm starting to believe that too, he said softly. Queen Heian's skin glowed just a little brighter. Colors swirling in patterns he was beginning to understand. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. In that moment, standing in the garden under an alien sky, Daewon realized something important. He'd stopped thinking of himself as a visitor. Somewhere along the way, 6 months had passed since Daewon arrived on Valora Prime. He could now speak the Valoran language well enough to hold conversations. He knew the palace's layout by heart. He could even win against Yejun in sparring about 1 time in 5, which the commander claimed was impressive for a human. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Until the day everything changed. Daewon was in the training hall with Kiwon and 4 other young Valorans when Yejun burst through the door. The commander's skin blazed battle red and he carried 2 weapons instead of his usual one. Daewon with me. Now, what's happening? Briefing in the war room. The queen wants you there. The war room was deep in the palace's secure section. Daewon had never been there before. When he entered, he found Queen Heian standing over a holographic display with Lady Sora and General Dalseok, the military commander. All 3 looked grim. Daewon. The queen gestured him forward. We have a situation. The Asheran Syndicate has made contact. Daewon's blood went cold. The Asheran were the terrorist group behind the bombing that had almost killed Princess Jia. He'd read the intelligence reports. They were still active, still dangerous, still committed to their goal of preventing human-alien cooperation. They've sent a message, General Dalseok said, pulling up a recording. A distorted voice filled the room, speaking in standard galactic common. Queen Heian, you harbor a human in your palace. You claim him as family. This is an abomination. Humanity is a disease that will corrupt the galaxy. You have 1 cycle to exile the human or we will remove him ourselves. The message ended. They're bluffing, Sora said. They can't reach Valora Prime. Our defenses are too strong. Maybe. General Dalseok didn't look convinced. But they managed to bomb Axios Prime despite heavy security. I wouldn't underestimate them. I won't exile Daewon, Queen Heian said flatly. That's not even a consideration. I could leave voluntarily, Daewon offered. If it would protect— No! The queen's voice left no room for argument. Running from terrorists sets a terrible precedent. We stand our ground. She turned to Dalseok. Increase palace security. Run threat assessments. I want every possible entry point monitored. Over the next week, the palace transformed. Guards doubled at every entrance. Security scanners went up everywhere. Even Daewon's quarters were swept daily for threats. Princess Jia noticed the changes and grew quiet, afraid. Daewon spent extra time with her, trying to keep things normal. But normal was already gone. 8 days after the threat, Daewon woke to the sound of alarms. Red emergency lights flooded his room. He grabbed the weapon Yejun had insisted he keep close and ran into the hallway. Chaos, guards running in formation, servants being evacuated, and in the distance the sound of explosions. "The Asheran are here," a guard shouted as he ran past. "They've breached the eastern wall." Daewon's training kicked in. He ran toward the family wing, toward where Princess Jia would be. Her room was 3 corridors away. He had to get to her. He found Yejun outside the princess's door, already in full battle armor. "Good, you're here. Stay with the princess while I coordinate the defense. Where's the queen?" "Leading the counterattack." "She's a warrior queen, Daewon. This is what we do." Yejun thrust a smaller weapon into Daewon's hands. "Crystal pistol. Point and shoot. The trigger reads intent, so don't hesitate. Stay here, protect the princess. That's your only job." Then Yejun was gone, and Daewon was alone with the heavy door between him and Jia. He opened it carefully. The princess sat on her bed, clutching a stuffed animal. When she saw Daewon, she ran to him. "I'm scared." "Where's Mama?" "Your mama is handling the bad people. She'll be back soon." Daewon knelt down to her level. "But until then, I'm here. Remember what I taught you? About being brave even when you're scared?" Jia nodded, her crystalline skin flickering with pale colors of fear. "Good. I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that?" "I can try." That's all anyone can ever do. They waited. Minutes felt like hours. Daewon positioned himself between the door and the princess, weapon ready. The sounds of fighting grew closer, then faded, then came close again. He tried not to think about what was happening out there, about how many might be dying. Then the door exploded inward. Daewon moved on instinct, pushing Jia behind him and raising his weapon. 3 figures in dark armor stormed through the smoke, Asharan attackers, their helmets hiding their faces. "The princess," one said in a mechanical voice. "Step aside, human, or die." "Third option," Daewon said and fired. The crystal pistol hummed in his hand. Blue energy lanced out, catching the first attacker in the chest. The armor held, but the impact threw the attacker backward into the hallway. The other 2 rushed him. Daewon had trained for this. 6 months of getting beaten by Yejun, learning to fight opponents stronger and faster. He dodged the first strike, used the attacker's momentum to throw him into the wall. The second attacker grabbed his arm, trying to twist the weapon away. Pain shot through Daewon's shoulder, but he didn't let go. Instead, he did something Yejun had taught him. He went with the motion, turning the throw into a roll that brought both him and the attacker to the ground. Up close, he fired point blank into the armor's weaker joint. The attacker screamed and released him. Daewon scrambled up, breathing hard. The first attacker was getting back to his feet. The second was wounded, but still dangerous. The third was somewhere in the hallway. This was bad. He couldn't beat 3 trained terrorists. But he didn't have to beat them. He just had to slow them down until help arrived. "Jia, stay behind me." Daewon backed up, keeping himself between the attackers and the princess. His mind raced through options. The balcony. If he could get them outside, there would be more room to maneuver, and palace guards might see them. But before he could act, the third attacker appeared in the doorway. This one was bigger, carried a larger weapon. The leader, probably. "Brave human," the leader said, "but foolish. You cannot win this, don't have to win. Just have to last," the leader laughed. "Last? There is no help coming. Your guards are busy with our main force. This room is isolated. You are alone." He's never alone. Queen Hei-In appeared behind the attackers like a vengeful spirit. Her crystalline skin blazed crimson and gold, the colors of battle fury. In her hands, she carried blades that glowed with the same energy as Daewon's pistol. She moved like lightning. The first attacker died before he could turn. The second managed to block one strike, but not the second. Only the leader survived long enough to fight back, and even then, he lasted maybe 10 seconds against the Queen's fury. When it was over, Queen Hei-In stood among the fallen enemies, her chest heaving, her skin still blazing with battle colors. She looked at Daewon, at the weapon in his hands, at Princess Jia safe behind him. "You held them," she said, and her voice held something like wonder. "I had motivation." Daewon lowered his weapon carefully. Is it over? The main attack is broken. We're still clearing the palace, but yes, it's over. The queen crossed to her daughter, pulling Jia into a fierce hug. Were you brave, my star? Daewon protected me, Jia said. Just like before. Queen Heian looked at Daewon over her daughter's head. Something passed between them in that look. Something deeper than words. Later, after the palace was secured and the casualties counted, Daewon found himself in the royal gardens. The attack had damaged parts of the palace, but the gardens remained untouched. The alien flowers glowed in the evening light. He heard footsteps and turned to see Queen Heian approaching. She'd cleaned the battle blood from her skin, but her color still swirled with leftover adrenaline. 17 dead, she said quietly. 43 wounded. But we destroyed the entire Asharan cell. Their leader was among the attackers you faced. The one I killed. I'm sorry about your people. They died protecting their home and their queen. There is honor in that. She sat on a bench, and Daewon joined her. You could have hidden when the alarms went off. Found somewhere safe. Jia needed me. Yes, she did. The queen turned to face him fully. When I found you in that room, fighting 3 trained killers with a weapon you'd barely trained with, all I could think was he's going to die protecting my daughter again. But I didn't die. No, you fought well. Commander Yejun would be proud. She paused. I am proud. Something in Daewon's chest tightened. I just did what needed doing. You always do. Queen Heian's skin shifted through colors. Why do you do this, Daewon? Truly? My people are not yours. This world is not yours. You could have refused Tal Shinar. You could have returned to Earth, but you stayed and you fight for us as if we were your own. Why? Daewon looked out at the alien landscape he'd come to love. Because you are my own now. Jia Yu, Yejun, Kiwan, even Lady Sora, you gave me something I never had before. A place where I matter. Where I'm not just another soldier following orders, but family protecting family. The queen's skin flickered through shades he'd never seen. And that's enough? To give up your whole species, your whole world? I didn't give them up. I chose something better. Daewon met her eyes. I chose this. Queen Heian reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she took his hand. Her crystalline skin was warm against his. When I claimed you as Talsha, 3 years had passed since the night of the Asharan attack. 3 years since Daewon first came to Valora Prime as a stranger bound by ancient law. Now standing on the palace balcony watching the sunrise paint the crystal mountains gold. He couldn't imagine being anywhere else. You're up early. Daewon turned to see Princess Jia, though she insisted people stop calling her princess so much these days. At 10 years old, she'd grown confident and strong. She spoke 3 languages fluently, including English, and had taken to following Daewon around whenever he taught combat classes. Couldn't sleep, he admitted. Big day. The human delegation arrives this afternoon. Jia leaned against the railing beside him. Are you nervous? A little. It's been 3 years since I've talked to anyone from Earth. Do you miss it? Earth, I mean. Daewon considered the question. Once it would have been simple. Now the answer was more complicated. I miss some things. Pizza. Rain that falls down instead of up. The color of the sky. He smiled at her. But I don't miss it enough to leave. Good. Jia bumped his shoulder with hers. Because I'd be sad if you left. Not planning on going anywhere, kid. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the world wake up. In the distance, Daewon could see the training grounds where he'd spent so many mornings getting beaten up by Yejun. Now he taught there himself, sharing human combat techniques with Velaran warriors. The classes had become popular, especially after word spread about how he'd held off trained attackers during the Asheran assault. Daewon, Jia's voice went quiet. Can I ask you something? Always. You and Mama, are you? I mean, everyone said... She trailed off, embarrassed. Daewon felt his face heat up. Your mother and I are close, yes. Like family close or like more than that close? That's complicated. Adults always say that when things are actually simple. Jia gave him a look far too knowing for someone her age. I see how she looks at you. How you look at her. And her skin turns violet around you all the time now. Everyone knows what that means. Before Daewon could figure out how to respond, the door opened and Queen Heian herself stepped onto the balcony. She wore formal robes for the upcoming diplomatic reception, deep purple with silver threading. Her crystalline skin glowed in the morning light. And yes, when she saw Daewon, hints of violet swirled through the other colors. Jia, your tutors are looking for you, the queen said. I know. I'm going. Jia hugged Daewon quickly. Don't let the Earth people talk you into leaving, she whispered, then dashed inside before he could reply. Queen Hei-In moved to stand beside him at the railing. For a moment, neither spoke. Over the past 3 years, they'd grown comfortable with these quiet moments together. She asked about us, Daewon said finally. Jia asks about everything. It's both wonderful and exhausting. The queen smiled. What did you tell her? That it's complicated, is it? Daewon looked at her. Really looked. Somewhere along the way, Queen Hei-In had stopped being just the alien ruler who'd claimed him by ancient law. She'd become the person he spent his evenings talking with. The one who laughed at his terrible jokes. The one whose company he sought out automatically. The one he'd started dreaming about. Maybe not as complicated as I told her, he admitted. Hei-In's skin rippled with that deep violet. Tal Shinar was duty. It bound us by law and honor. But this, she gestured between them, this is something else entirely. What do we call it? Among my people there is a word. Tal Shinar Mora. Life debt love. When the bond of sacrifice transforms into something deeper. She turned to face him fully. It is rare, sacred, and it requires acknowledgement from both parties. Daewon's heart hammered in his chest. Are you saying? I'm saying that I claimed you 3 years ago because of what you did. Now I would claim you for who you are. Her voice softened. If you would have me. Before Daewon could answer, a chime sounded from inside. Hei-In sighed. The delegation will arrive soon. We should prepare. This conversation isn't over, Daewon said. I certainly hope not. The human delegation arrived exactly on schedule. Ambassador Taeyang led the group, looking older than Daewon remembered, but still sharp-eyed. Behind him came a dozen officials and military personnel, all staring at the Crystal Palace with undisguised awe. The formal reception took place in the Great Hall. Queen Hei-In presided from her throne, with Lady Sora on one side and, for the first time, Daewon on the other. The placement wasn't lost on anyone. It declared his status as clearly as any proclamation. Your Majesty, Taeyang bowed respectfully. Thank you for receiving us. Earth sends its greetings and hopes for continued cooperation between our peoples. Ambassador, your arrival honors us. Queen Hei-In gestured to Daewon. I believe you know our shield companion. Taeyang's eyes widened slightly at the title. Daewon, it's good to see you well. Ambassador. Daewon stood and clasped the man's hand. It felt strange, that human gesture he'd almost forgotten. Welcome to Valora Prime. The formal speeches and diplomatic pleasantries dragged on for an hour. Finally, Hei-In called for a recess and Taeyang asked to speak with Daewon privately. They walked through the palace gardens, away from listening ears. Shield Companion, Taeyang said. That's a new title. Created specifically for me, actually. Someone who protects the royal family but isn't bound by traditional military hierarchy. I see. The ambassador stopped walking. Daewon, I'm going to be direct. Earth wants you to come home. The words hung in the air between them. Not as a recall or punishment, Taeyang continued quickly. As a hero. You've become famous back home. The human who saved an alien princess, who integrated into their society, who helped defend their world. People want to meet you, honor you. We could offer you any position you wanted. Military command, diplomatic corps, civilian life with full benefits. Whatever you desire. I have what I desire here. Do you? Taeyang's voice was gentle. Or are you trapped by obligation? The Tal Shinar bound you to this place. But it's been 3 years. Surely the debt is paid. This isn't about debt anymore, then what is it about? Daewon looked back at the palace, at the impossible crystal towers that had become home. It's about belonging. Finding where you fit. I never had that on Earth, Ambassador. I was a soldier, a hired guard, just another body doing a job. Here I'm family. I teach, I protect, I matter. You mattered on Earth too, did I? Daewon shook his head. Be honest. If I came back, how long before I was just another veteran with a strange story? A curiosity people gawked at? Here I'm building something. I'm part of something. Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Is it the Queen? Are you staying for her? I'm staying for all of it. Jia, who calls me her starkeeper. Ki-Wan, who looks up to me like an older brother. Yejun, who's become a friend. Sora, who finally admitted I might not be completely useless. Daewon paused. And yes, Heian. I'm staying for her too. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Daewon answered anyway. I do. Does she feel the same? I think so. We're figuring it out. Taeyang nodded slowly. I had to ask. Had to give you the choice. But I can see you've already made it. He smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right one. You look happy, Daewon. Happier than I've ever seen you. I am happy. That evening there was a formal banquet. Daewon sat at the high table beside Queen Heian, watching the two delegations mingle below. Valerans and humans sharing food and stories, building bridges between worlds. You could go back, Heian said quietly. For his ears only. I would release you from Tal Shinar. No shame, no dishonor. You've earned your freedom. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. This is about what you choose. Daewon set down his cup and turned to face her. The great hall buzzed with conversation around them, but it felt like they were alone. 3 years ago you claimed me. You said I was yours to protect, yours to guard, yours to honor. Remember? I remember every word. Good. Because now I'm claiming you. He took her hand, not caring who saw. I choose to stay, not because of duty or law or debt, but because this is where I belong. You asked me once why I fight for your people like they're my own. They are my own. You are my own. Heian's skin blazed with violet so deep it was almost purple. Daewon, I'm not finished. You said Tal Shinar Mora requires acknowledgement from both parties. So here's mine. I love you, Heian. Not as my queen, not as the person I'm bound to serve. I love you as the woman who gave me a home, who gave me family, who gave me purpose. I was claimed by fate, but I stay by choice. My choice. And I choose you. For a moment, the queen of the Valoran Empire looked like she might cry. Then she smiled, brilliant and joyful, and her skin shimmered with every color at once. Then I claim you too, she said. Not by ancient law, but by choice, by love. You are mine, Daewon of Earth, and I am yours. Around them, the room had gone quiet. Everyone was staring. Daewon realized he'd just declared his love for an alien queen in front of 2 planetary delegations. Jia started clapping. Then Kiwon joined in. Then the entire room erupted in applause. 3 days later, there was another ceremony. This one was smaller, more personal. Daewon stood before the royal family and the human delegation, and formally took Valoran citizenship. Princess Jia placed a crystal pendant around his neck, the mark of royal family members. Queen Heian stepped forward, wearing robes that,